Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is Josh Levine and Great Mondays. One of the biggest challenges that I have found in actually enacting change within an organization, getting cultures to change, is the capacity of the humans inside of the business to really understand who they are. And we're going to talk today with a clinical psychotherapist, Jade Wood. She does performance coaching through a clinical lens, and I brought her on to talk about emotional intelligence at work because, God damn it, if I feel like I don't have that expertise, and if I could get those leaders to just be a little more self-aware, then we could make a bigger difference. And so I want to have this conversation with Jade. I want to learn about it, and I want you all to hear about it too. So welcome to Great Mondays Radio, Jade Wood.
Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, I'm so into it. We're gonna discuss all of that.
Okay. So much to talk about. Give me your kind of thesis on the importance of emotional intelligence at work. Let's just start with the basics here.
Oh my gosh. Uh, Basically, emotional intelligence or self-awareness are the key to everything. I believe that your level of emotional intelligence determines your experience of life. And the level of emotional intelligence or the mean or average emotional intelligence within an organization, and probably, of course, weighted to leadership and so forth, is going to
Mm-hmm.
determine the success of the culture and is highly connected to the employee experience and to employee engagement. And it really doesn't matter just like what you're doing or what you're advertising or what you're saying, but the
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence within all of it is basically the glue that holds it all together.
What what tends to happen when a leader is not no. Okay, I want to ask that question, but I want to define emotional intelligence first, and then we'll get to some of those applications. What is, in your experience, how do you define emotional intelligence? Just so we can all go in this
Yeah,
journey
yeah,
together.
totally. Like lightly the ability to, you know, detect, infer, process, understand, and healthily act upon one's own emotions or internal world and the emotions and actions of others.
So, how we experience the world and how we then react, I think, is the key word here, right? React to the experience of what's coming into to us. Is that right?
Yes, and only to be picky here because it matters. I would even say to respond, because a big part of emotional intelligence is moving away from kind of quote unquote natural reactions,
Ah,
being able to take a step back and determining how to respond. But yes, emotional intelligence is essentially, if we have which we do, a emotional intelligence, quote, data processing center in our brain,
yeah.
how skillful is it in detecting what's coming in, coding it, and then providing the proper output? And so often we're not
Yeah.
processing things correctly, just like we want to process all data and analyze all data correctly, which is basically like
Right.
all that we're talking about now, anyways.
Yeah, right. But in this case, it's not the ones and zeros, it's the human beings coming at us and what's
Yes.
happening, right?
Yes. And it's then, so you say something to me, there's a data center inside of me that's processing it.
Yeah.
What's the story I'm telling myself about that? How does that make me feel about myself? How does that land for me? That then determines how I process that and create or come up with an output, and my level of emotional intelligence or my ability to process and analyze that data quickly, correctly, and effectively,
Yeah.
moment over moment, minute after minute, day after day, determines everything.
Okay. So let's talk about the common situation that I feel everyone has experienced or some experience with, which is the leader without the that does not operate with emotional intelligence. What are some of the common, just as an entry point, what are some of the common symptoms of an organization that is led by one or more, because usually it's multiple leaders who just aren't, let's say, just not peak emotional intelligence? What
Sure.
have you seen that occurs because
Or
of it?
sure, or just are not locked in that way. I mean,
Yeah.
what you see is, in no particular order, a lack of trust. So mistrust in a sense of organizational initiatives, of culture, of
Mm.
different ventures that the organization internally or externally seeks to provide. So that
Okay.
means maybe you see skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you see resentment instead of a good faith effort on the part of the employees. They see it more from a negativity bias or a negative lens, kind of, oh, one more thing,
Mm.
instead of, wow, our well-intentioned, amazing leader is now come up with another way that we can improve our organization and get better.
Yeah.
So again, that lens which things are held is skewed more negative, it's skewed more mistrusting. You have people who are just overall going to be less engaged.
Yeah.
I mean, can you be highly engaged at work and, like you said, having a leader who's has very poor emotional intelligence? Probably. And we're going to hear from a lot of people maybe who say yes,
Yeah.
that's the case for them. But then what are the trade-offs there and why is
That's
that
right.
worth it?
Yeah.
Right. So burnout, lack of employee engagement,
Yeah.
resentment,
Yeah.
and not a sense of
Yeah.
trust. And you have people then, if you don't have employee engagement, you don't have people who feel like, whoa, I'm building this thing. Like I'm part of
Yeah.
something. I get up every day and I have this sense of charge about what I'm doing. It's not perfect. We're not like talking about perfection here,
No.
but we are talking about a good enough lens on all of these things.
Why does an organization, so just to go one click further or down on that, why do you think an organization that is led by someone who is not tapped into their emotional intelligence not have that implicit trust? And we talk a lot about in culture, talk a lot about trust as being sort of that kernel, that's the core you got to build on. What is happening that they're like, there's another thing and everybody goes, oh, Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, another thing that's going to get in the way. Like, what is like, why, like, because that's to me, when you said that, that's what I just are kind of articulated, like making up a quote about like what that experience is like, right? You get that email or you get an announcement and you're like, what is that? I don't trust them. So what is happening? The person, the leaders don't have that awareness. And so you're saying they're making poor decisions that then push people away. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, why is distrust, skepticism more likely to be prevalent in an organization led by someone who does not have emotional intelligence locked in?
Yeah, absolutely. Because most, we're not giving our leaders or our, people in one's family emotional intelligence exams and scoring them like on an 8 LSAT or whatever, and like knowing what score people are walking around with, right? So you kind of implicitly
Oh, yeah.
determine
Right.
someone's emotional intelligence by their behaviors, by the output, by how you feel around them, by
Mm-hmm.
how they're
Mm-hmm.
treating you, their decisions, their
Mm-hmm.
characterization of things, their ego strength, their willingness to take responsibility, their ability to show empathy, their ability to observe their own behaviors and have insight, which is everything. So, if we talk to those employees who
Yeah.
feel that they, are that their leader is not emotionally intelligent, it's probably because they feel misunderstood by the leadership. They don't feel that the leadership actually acknowledges and sees their concerns. They don't feel that the leadership is able to step into their shoes and kind of hold theory of mind or
Yeah.
recognize that
Yeah.
multiple truths exist. I mean,
Yeah.
so many things along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it's really this disconnect, and you and I previously have talked about kind of the trust in relationships and how you're not being seen is like a big piece of that. So you're just not aware. These leaders are not aware. Let's flip this then and say, what does it feel like? And if everybody who's listening has been part of, they're lucky enough to have been part of an organization, right? It is less common to be have worked for someone that is appropriately emotionally intelligent. What does that experience feel like? Is it just the inverse, like we're walking around, trust, we know, we believe they have the best intentions, they see us? It's as easy as just kind of flipping what you just said?
Exactly. I mean, all things considered, yes. I don't want to suggest that you're walking or that we're walking around in a fairy tale that's as like soft and comfy as kindergarten was, right?
Right,
But
right.
you are walking around with with a leader who you trust in their humanness and you trust in how they hold and carry themselves. It's
Yeah.
like any good figure in your life. You don't expect them to be perfect, but you trust in how they're self-directed and how they choose to carry themselves. So a more emotionally intelligent leader can admit when they're wrong. A more emotionally intelligent leader can stand in their strength, but still acknowledge when something was a poor business decision or there was a lack of, oversight or whatever
Right.
into something.
Right. I'm
You know,
willing
they
to
can
step forward and say, hey, everybody, this was a choice that I made and it was incorrect. And I acknowledge that. Like, I feel like that's a big, being able to, and you've mentioned ego strength, you've being able to step forward and being vulnerable. You don't have all the answers, and that's okay. But it just feels like many leaders are not okay with that. Is like
ex
that's
ex exactly, and that engenders trust, and what and where that's coming from matters too. If someone says, I don't have all the answers and appears to be, like weak and completely lost in that, that's not what we want to see in a
right,
leader.
right,
But if
right, right,
someone
right.
can stand in their strength and say, I didn't have the answers here, this was the wrong call, I understand why, now we're moving in this direction, et cetera, that
Mm-hmm.
engenders trust, that engenders more faith. You can have command and still have some degree of vulnerability, and it does not have to be a weakness. It just depends on how you hold it. Someone who is overly overcompensating and, cannot show any vulnerability, they might think that's strength. That is actually weakness too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's the the,
yeah,
the internal components
yeah,
of all of this really matter.
yeah. We'll get just a second. We'll talk about how on one, I'm asking selfishly, can develop their own emotional intelligence. But before we get to that, why do you think most organizations, maybe the premise of the question is incorrect. This is my experience. Most organizations are led by people with incomplete emotional intelligence. It feels like a rarity to find a place that where you're like, yeah, I can really sign up. I can feel that way. Why do you think there's people that rise to leadership that maybe don't, they're just not as emotionally intelligent? I mean, how does that, maybe you don't have an answer, but this is, I don't know. It's just something where it's like, God, if we could just freaking, you know what I mean? Like, why is this happening? Why are the majority of these organizations have people that are just not quite there?
Well, I mean, it's often not rewarded. And
Okay.
I'm genuinely really, I'm really not on a soapbox here when I say this, like truly, but it's not even, I mean, it's just not rewarded. It's not highly incentivized in much of like society or like traditional like education and like academia and so
Yep.
forth.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but also most people, everyone has personal work to do. Every person on the planet has
Amen.
blind spots,
Mm-hmm.
something intergenerationally that they need to come to terms with.
Yep.
Defenses and ways of solving problems or handling situations that worked for them in the past that no longer work for them. Everyone has things that they do that turn
Yep.
people off.
Yep.
Some of the work that I love the most that I do in the performance coaching is helping individuals, and this is not easy, helping individuals understand how people experience them. What's it like to
What
be in
does
a
it look like?
room?
Ugh.
right?
Oh man, that
So
hurts.
hard,
It's
but
so hard.
it's so empowering, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
cannot the degree of work that we're willing to do to some extent determines how far we're going to go, like the
yeah,
degree of our personal
yeah,
work. And the more that it's like if you renovate the basement of your home or something, if you can do that work and shine a light on all these things that are so uncomfortable, you gain so much more inner value and so much more power and true confidence to come from. So it's like it's a metamorphosis that's ultimately in your favor and in one's
yeah,
favor to look at those things. So
yeah.
walking into work with your badge and getting past security doesn't mean that you turn your psyche off, right? It doesn't mean that you turn off
No, right.
all the things that you do that kind of, don't work for you at home or in your community also are going to show up in some strain
Yeah,
in the workplace,
yeah,
especially under tension,
yeah,
especially with performance goals, especially in conflict-based situations. I mean, we know that most people don't lay awake at night thinking about, the new product development or something business oriented. If they're laying awake at night, it's because of that interaction they had with their with colleague, that
mm-hmm,
email chain that they're
mm-hmm.
so fired up about, the way that they feel that someone doesn't understand or really recognize their work they're doing, right? Like it's all about emotional intelligence and this relating culture concept of things.
Doesn't the 360 employee review that they do every year, doesn't that give you enough perspective from the outside?
Oh my gosh. I mean, if done well,
I'm just I'm setting it up for you.
like
I'm setting it up for
should
you,
anyone
Jade.
be like holding a scalpel? Not necessarily, right? Like
Right.
if it's done really, really well, but otherwise we know all the
Why? Okay,
shortcomings
okay.
with
My
that.
real question is, what is the difference between, like, what is that lacking? Like the 360, where you get feedback from all, the people that work with you, that work for
All
you,
your touch points.
right?
Yeah.
That's the idea. And the premise is a complete perspective of how others experience you, which is what I believe you just said. And I just had that gut feeling of like, wait, um, what, why aren't those? I mean, theoretically, like many organizations do this. I would expect, it's like that's what it's supposed to do. So, what is lacking in those 360s that you are able to surface for leaders in the way that you engage with them?
How much time do we have? Like,
Right. I
Joe,
know.
this
I
is going to
know.
be Josh's podcast where
I
it's the
yeah, yeah.
4 hour marathon
All
end
right.
of the
All
year
right. Yeah.
special. Um, Listen, one is you if I'm filling that out on behalf of someone I work with or for, I have to be emotionally intelligent in understanding the feedback that I'm truly giving. Is this feedback truly how this person is showing up or coming across, or is it something that's actually inside of me that's coming out?
Mhm.
How distorted is my sense of this thing? How clean is
Yeah.
is my reception?
Yeah.
Two, giving that feedback as in proctoring it to the person who's ultimately the main character here has to be done well. I
Yeah.
mean, it takes emotional intelligence to give
Yes.
feedback
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
well and effectively. The person has to feel motivated and deeply encouraged to change, and it has to be safe, but not so safe that it's
Yeah.
dull and ineffective, right? And a lot of times I hear people don't even answer those accurately or
Yeah. Right.
transparently anymore because they just don't feel that it's actually confidential. So people are just kind of putting these like pedantic responses in, and it's
Yeah.
it's just more of another exercise than something that's actually a tool.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Let's move to, how do individuals, how might someone start to assess or improve their own emotional, where obviously this is a lifetime practice. So per your last comment,
Totally,
it's not everything,
totally.
but if I were to start, right, where should someone start to become aware of their maybe emotional intelligence level, or just moving one baby step forward? What do we do?
Sure. Two things that I very much love is, and you can kind of carry this around with you all day, is asking yourself, one, what's the energy I'm bringing into the room?
Okay.
So what's it like to
What's
be,
the energy?
what's
Okay.
the energy I'm bringing in, right? What am I already co-creating? Let's take personal responsibility for that. And again, I find all of this really empowering and not punishing. It's like, oh my gosh, if there's something that I can change here, then this control is a good thing. Two, what's the story I'm telling myself right now? We
Oh,
are all often running around with projections, implicit assumptions, narratives, limiting beliefs, and so forth. The deeper you can get into those, the more that you recognize, again, what you're co creating and how you're contributing to something and what you're really acting from. Um, if that
yeah.
where you're coming from, because in a sense everything is state dependent. So the more that one is in a aligned, healthy self-esteem, healthy self-worth, good energy level, and I kind of mean that in all ways, from self-care all the way to,
Yeah.
and any other word they use, energy, that determines what your output is. So the more that your inner world and all of this has that, um, is taken care of, the better the outer world is going to be.
I would say I love this. What's the story that you're telling yourself? And why that to me feels like a key unlock is just even the awareness that there is a story and you are telling it to yourself,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
That
Yep.
that needs to be step number 1, because in my experience for my own self and what I see, what I have seen in the world, and I'm certainly, along this journey, but not far enough, um, is, oh shit, like it is just a story. It is not reality. It is just a story that I'm telling myself about, like the person who's like, this is the example, right? Like the person who cut you off. You don't know what's happening there, right? Like that's just you're telling yourself a story. And I catch myself like if I'm like upset about something, and sometimes I catch myself sooner than later. I'm like, just like back off. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening there. I don't know what is, it's like I don't know what it is that's occurring, and we're just inferring on top of each other, and it creates this like mania sometimes for me. I'll say for me, of this moment of storytelling. And so there is, that has been for me a really big piece of my own growth is, oh, this is something that I am making up based on data points. And I think it's true. My brain thinks it's true, but we need to understand that it is a story that we're telling ourselves. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely on so many levels. Because in a sense, when you say my brain thinks it's true, what I hear and what I'm aware of is that these feelings are familiar, but more often what I'm feeling is telling me, and again, this is where it gets deeper into sessions and stuff like that, but where like most often the feelings that I'm feeling are not telling me what's happening right now, about the car cutting me off. They're telling me about something that happened in the past. And
Yeah.
so the work I need to do is
Yeah.
be able to use my emotional intelligence and my desire for a greater quality of life and more love for myself to separate that out and decide, because we're conscious creators, like what I want the new quote unquote like story
Right.
to be. And what
Right.
I'm hearing you say is when you get to that place of like, I think mania or however you phrase it, really it's just you're just dysregulated because it's
That's
all
right.
those stories are kind of piling on each other.
It's not just the thing in the moment, it's the thing that's built on top of your entire history.
Yes, your history and your pattern, right, and your pattern of reactions or your pattern of,
Yeah.
that's the thing in terms of how do we build emotional intelligence. I'm less interested in one-offs, but I am very interested in patterns, and we can
That's right.
all look
Yeah.
at our own patterns.
Yeah.
Why do I constantly feel this way in X situation? Why do I
Yeah.
constantly show up this way in groups or different dynamics at the
Yeah.
workplace, wherever it is?
Yeah.
And the thing too, Josh, about the story I'm telling myself is as you're, obviously totally locked into, it's not just thoughts. It's not just the thought I'm thinking right now. Often, and the deeper level of work is what's the more implicit or nonverbal belief or association or assumption I'm carrying into the room,
Yeah.
into the interview, into anything. And that's where you start to get into the blueprint of really how you're wired and really what your operating instructions are, like what your iOS is, right?
Hmm.
And then that's where the greatest change is possible.
Becoming aware of that. I mean, I know I've been married for 20 plus years now. And so my wife is, she will look at me and she's like, she knows I'm triggered because I'm not feeling seen and I'm interpreting what she said. And, this goes into obviously relationships and there's all sorts of stuff there. But it's those moments. And I've done the work to go, and I still feel it less often, but I'm like, oh, that's because of how I was raised, right? I don't feel seen. I've been run over. And so that's my thing. Like, that's one of the things that I'm like, it's like all of a sudden I'm like, in this instantly dysregulated.
Right,
And you can
right,
imagine, like, at work, there's
right,
just a
right.
whole, like, it's just so many other people's and the relationships and all the shit coming at you. And if you're dysregulated already, and then it's like, yeah, it's just a bad combo of things.
Right. And I really appreciate your vulnerability here. And we all have our own versions of this. And to your point, imagine working with a colleague who has an unhealed wound of not being seen.
Yep.
Not easy.
No.
That's going to come up.
Even worse if it's a leader, right? If it's because
Exactly.
they have, then
Or
there's
it's your
implicit,
manager.
it's your
Yes.
manager. Exactly. Because then there's this power that they have over you, and they can use that not consciously, but like, or maybe they do, but like, you are in this relationship of unequal power. And so it's like, I don't, I'm just going to tiptoe around them now. You know what I mean? Like, and that then I
Yes.
think goes right back to trust, relationships, right? Like, I can't be honest with this person because like, this is their thing. And I guess that's fine if there's one or two of those, but like, you just can't, I don't know. There's so many
Right. Right. Well, and this is
externalities.
really the power of vulnerability because if I'm in an organization, I don't know that this person has a not being seen wound and I don't have
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
awareness of it, but I know that, you just idea is not like it comes up in a chip on a shoulder, it comes up
Yeah.
in taking up too much space, or it comes up in, you can feel it. So I don't know
How,
what's going on, but I know that I'm not enjoying collaborating with this
I
person.
don't trust. I just don't trust.
It's just more
Lack
effort,
of
it's more emotional labor.
safe. So, one of the big ones for me that I have seen time and time again, especially in sort of North American enterprise organizations, is lack of comfort with conflict and safe conflict, and the ability to actually step up and say, this is, how do I build that trust to be able to articulate something that is a criticism of somebody. That to me, I've seen as a very big blockage in a lot of leaders that I've worked with, is just, how do you enable them to be better at saying what they need to say, and changing culture that way, right? Because the culture exists because people are acting in a certain way and you're not able to call them out.
Right, absolutely. I often speak or lead groups at different like leadership retreats and so forth. So let's say we're at a leadership retreat and the organization or you yourself decided that the level of vulnerability they want to get to or that they find is permissible is what you just shared. So now all of a sudden, Josh, like you're my colleague, but I have so much more understanding and insight into you. And I'm also listening to you say, hey, I don't like feeling this way either. I get, Jade, it's not working for you. It's also not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to heal this part of me. I don't want this to have so much control over me. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
then you see this power of vulnerability and how it brings people closer and it just creates so much more understanding. And, it doesn't matter what level we're working at. It doesn't matter how, glitzy or powerful or glamorous any of it seems. Everyone has these wounds inside. Some of them are just more dolled up in a sense, right? So we
Mm.
this is applicable
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. There's
Mm-hmm.
always
Mm-hmm.
healing to be done.
Okay, last piece of practical advice. Is there some question or way to engage with a colleague or even a manager, maybe colleagues a little easier, that will help you build a little more trust? It's not your responsibility. You don't need to do the emotional work of, this other human. But how is there a way to engage with a peer who is has those hotspots, those triggers, or they're just not, you just feel like it's not working as well? Like, is there something that
Right.
we can do? And again, like, I'm not asking to solve the problem, but like, so many people work with, and you would start maybe by calling them difficult colleagues. That's someone that probably has a lot of trauma, but even someone where you're like, I would just like to do a little bit of a better job working with this person.
Right. I mean, yeah, no, it's a tricky question, or it's a tricky situation that people find themselves in. I mean, I think we're talking about a balance between not showing up in a codependent way, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna
Mm-hmm.
enable this and walk on eggshells and, limit what I say, blah, blah, blah. At the same time, we don't need to self-sabotage and like walk right into someone's
Exactly.
wound that we know is there
Yeah.
just because we should be able to do it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think, there's just a piece there, the clinical language in a way would sort of be individuation, or where I would want to approach someone like that by not taking them personally, by seeing any way that they're showing up is where they're
Oh, that's
at,
great. That's great.
and really
Yeah.
holding that almost as two separate mirrors that are going on sort of in parallel, but knowing what I'm looking into, which is my own sense of self on the inside, which goes
Yeah.
back to like all of this.
Yeah.
And I would almost want to hold sort of like a unconditional, like a try to, again, some of this we it can be aspirational times, but try to hold a bit of an unconditional positive regard, meaning I'm not going to, or like positive expectant faith, like I'm not going to then now expect to get some sort of like negative thing occurring. I'm going to act as if this person is a secure, safe person. I'm not going to I'm not going to see them through that lens, because
Right.
we end up creating the thing that we're holding. Just like with your
Right. Right.
car example,
Yeah.
in their stories we tell ourselves, yes, they just live inside of us, but recapitulation and reenactment of stories and self-fulfilling prophecy over time does become a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And the more that you think, I'm going to get cut off, people don't see me, I'm invisible, why doesn't anybody see me? You will start to create that stuff. Like the way that you show up in reality and in the environment will start to unconsciously elicit
Yeah.
and pull those things. And
Yeah.
then it's reinforcing, and you're like, see, I am invisible.
That's right. Yeah.
And I all the time.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. That is. It's really like, it feels, that phenomena in and of itself feels so out there, but I have seen it represent. I have seen it come to life so many times in such crazy ways where you're like, what the hell? Like, that's so insane. So just to acknowledge that, like, that's a whole nother
Yes.
episode. But
Yes,
I want to
absolutely.
pull. I want to call out the thing that you just said, which is really great, which is the mantra that I repeat, which is, it's not about me, right? Like, their response is not about me. What
Yes.
they're saying, how they're saying it, is not about me. And that is so hard, because you feel like, I don't know, it could be personally attacked or whatever it is. It's like they are expressing their truth, their place. And that is, really, really hard. But like, I think that is a very powerful way to start to come at it. And I love number two, which I hadn't really like to myself kind of captured in the way that you did, which is, your work will be to show up as if they are, a fully developed human being, and not being like, oh, here
Right.
comes da da da,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Because you
Yes.
can
Yes.
actually improve your interaction by looking for great, coming at it with a, even little, visual cues that you have on your
Right.
face, right? Where you're
That's
like
right.
coming in with the higher eyebrows
That's
versus the
right.
grumpy eyebrows, right? Like, and that person's going to
Right.
react or
That's
not.
right. That's right. That's right. No, you're exactly spot on.
Yeah.
And we can still have boundaries and limits and healthy self-protection while we hold that positive
Mm.
self-regard.
Oh
We can do.
man.
And if I
Yeah.
feel like something's coming at me and it's personal, and this is, sort of higher level self-development work, but can I still hold on to myself internally and not have it just like wash away,
Yeah.
my anchor to myself? Can I still
Yeah.
feel secure, even
Yeah.
if I'm hearing something that's
Yeah.
uncomfortable that may be true or may not be true? Because I need to also be able to recognize, is there some truth in this just because it's so uncomfortable? And do that internal work of
Yeah.
dissecting and sorting, which, by
Yeah.
the way, is what emotional intelligence is.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's a perfect place to wrap it up. Oh my goodness. Well, thanks everybody for listening to my therapy session.
Oh my God.
This is
I wish we went in deeper, but this was so great. In terms of
of
your
course.
your
No,
story, Josh,
yeah,
I want
yeah,
to
yeah.
talk to you more,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. This is look, we all have some work to do, and I just so appreciate your perspective and your lens on this. So helpful, so interesting, really, really great stuff. Jade Wood is a clinical psychotherapist who does performance coaching work. She helps organizations set up emotional intelligence labs through multiple modalities to help organizations improve emotional intelligence throughout their organization a bunch of different ways. I thank you. You obviously, I think there's just a lot there, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. We got to help people be better, and work is a great place to do it, so we can all be a little bit happier, a little more fulfilled at doing the thing we do every day. Thank you so much, Jade. I really appreciate you coming on.
Josh, it's so great to connect with you. I really appreciate your authenticity and your presence and our conversation and, how we connected initially and so forth. It's synchronistic and everything. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. If you want to learn more about Jade Wood, you can find her on LinkedIn. Look for Jade Wood, MA LMFT. She is out there doing some very cool stuff. I definitely recommend checking her out. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening in to another episode of Great Mondays Radio.